is today? 10th. 3, 2. What is going on, CaneSport, and good morning to you all. It is Izubee Charles, joined by Stephen Wagner on this fine Tuesday morning, December 10th. Thank you for starting your day off with us here at Good Morning CaneSport, and we have a lot to talk about on the recruiting fronts on this morning's show. Stephen, the transfer portal opened yesterday, and it has been very, very hectic. A ton of big names around the country jumping in the portal. A few guys from Miami, leaving the Hurricanes, jumping in the portal. So a lot of news on the portal front. But today we're going to focus a little bit on high school recruiting while talking about a little bit of the portal as well. Stephen, we've seen it, in that first official day of the portal opening, a ton of names across the country jumping into it. Just, what are your initial thoughts about the portal opening? What it could mean for the Hurricanes in the near future?
Yeah. Well, first off, I kind of want to address, the calendar shift that we had from last year to this year, moving National Signing Day up so that players actually have the opportunity to sign with their school of choice before the transfer portal opens. And what that does, I think, is it kind of puts universities, it kind of puts the teams themselves in a little bit less favorable of a position, because now, because previously, whenever you were able to maybe kind of, see what was available in the transfer portal, really get a feel for the talent that you would be able to land, and then move forward into the high school signing class. Now it's the other way around. Now you are having to make a hard decision on if you are going to want to deeply invest in high school recruiting and sign a group of guys and commit to a group of guys by accepting their letters of intent on signing day, and then going to the portal and seeing who all is available. Or if you just want to roll the dice, you want to stick with a smaller high school class, and then you want to test the waters in the portal. So I think this is something that gives a lot more security to the athletes themselves, especially high school players coming out. I think it gives a lot of kids a lot more security, especially at some of these schools that do feature the portal a little bit heavier. But overall, if I was a fan of a school, then, and I was in the position where you're asking me if I would rather my school kind of be forced to go in a certain direction, or if that school's going to be able to have flexibility. Obviously, as a fan, you want your school to have as much flexibility as you can, but I do think that by and large, kind of the shift in the calendar is a lot better for the high school athletes themselves. I think it gives them much, much, much more security. And now teams are going to look at the portal, and they're going to kind of get a feel for what talent they're going to want to go ahead and add now that the portal is available. What positions did you not address in recruiting through the high school level? Where do you feel like you still need depth? What are some positions where you think that true freshmen will be able to compete at right away? They'll be able to play at right away. And where are you going to go to the portal and fix those giant holes of need?
Yeah, I feel like with that, the portal date getting moved back, I feel like that did add extra, security for those 2025 guys that were, a little bit on the edge of signing with schools and just getting that over with. And now Miami can turn that full focus on the portal, because before last year, we saw Miami kind of had to balance the portal and high school recruiting. Is now all attention is turned to the portal. And there are a lot of names that jumped in. We covered a few guys on Monday on the site, and we'll have you covered throughout the week with new names that pop into the portal and things in that nature. So stay tuned, with CaneSport, as we have you covered with the portal warfare, as I like to call it, as new guys continue to jump in, and Miami looks to bolster that roster. But, as we finish up the 2025 class, we had a ton of people on the message board asking, hey, who's up next in that 2026 class? And over the last 2 days, we'll be running stories about, some of the top in-state and out-of-state prospects that Miami Hurricanes are targeting in that 2026 cycle. First story ran about the in-state guys and a ton of top prospects in the Sunshine State, specifically in South Florida, that the Hurricanes are targeting. First guy I kind of want to mention is, one of the highest rated guys down here, Calvin Russell, 2026 wide receiver out of Miami Northwestern, who is, looking to be, that guy in that 2026 class for the Hurricanes at that wide receiver position. A ton of talented guys. Steven, just off the top of your head, who are some, 2026 guys that you really like, maybe, in South Florida and, just in the Sunshine State in general in that 2026 class?
I really like Derek Cooper a lot. The four-star athlete out of Chaminade. I think he could play running back. I think he could play linebacker. I think he could play safety. I think that you could do so many different things with this kid that he's going to be one of these guys where maybe you recruit him as an athlete, you get him on campus, and then you have a very good problem of figuring out what you're actually going to want to do with him. I think he's the kind of kid that really is a dream recruit for a lot of head coaches just because he's so versatile. And depending on where you need help at, I really do think that he could jump over to that position and be able to help out. If your linebacker room is a little bit light, he could totally help bolster that. If you really need a running back, I've got no doubt that he could be a 15 carry a game guy. If you're weak in the secondary, I think you could probably keep him kind of lean and he could end up being a safety. I think there are just so many things that you can do with him. I think this class is going to be really, really good. Another kid I really like a lot has to be Brandon Bennett, the four-star receiver out of American Heritage. Really, really, really explosive. Probably one of the more truly explosive athletes out of South Florida in this upcoming cycle. Maybe not the biggest national recruit, even though he is a consensus four-star receiver. But he's also someone who I actually think is going to be better at the college level than he is at the high school level. Now, obviously, he was kind of wide receiver two at American Heritage with Malachi Tony sort of being the do-it-all guy last year. And if Tony hadn't reclassified, by the way, I would absolutely have said that Malachi Tony was 100% going to be on this list too. But with Tony off now in the 2025 class, Brandon Bennett looks like he is going to be that guy out of American Heritage. I think that, as he continues to get older, he continues to develop. I think he's got his best football well ahead of him. I think he's got a really good ceiling. And I think that he hasn't even begun good. I think he is, and he's already a very, very good player. Speed's kind of his superpower. He's a track star. Think he ended up going to state for the 200 meter. It was either the 200 meter or the 100 meter. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'm going to need to double check that. He's just as fast in pads, and he is really, really hard for secondaries to cover, especially whenever he gets the chance to get vertical. I think he's only going to continue to improve. Those are two guys that I like a lot. You already took one from me in Calvin Russell. I like him a lot too. And then another guy who maybe I think is going to be a dude to keep a name on here in South Florida, I'm going to say is Javian Mallory, the four-star running back out of West Boca. Maybe not necessarily an actual local kid, since he is in Boca and not in the Fort Lauderdale or Miami area, but he's really more of kind of a traditional power back. Maybe doesn't have the greatest top end speed, but a really hard runner, very physical, loves contact, and whenever he really gets himself going, he is a handful to deal with. And he is not a guy who you look forward to tackling whenever he gets a chance to start going downhill. He finishes through contact. He always seems to find a way to fall forward. He's one of these guys who turns, like a 2-yard gain into a 3.5, 4-yard gain. He's not consistently going to be a home run hitter, but he's the type of guy who can turn bunts into singles, and then he can turn singles into doubles. And that's stuff that obviously is going to continue to add up over the course of the game. I think he's going to be a guy that we'll be keeping a pretty close eye on too.
Yeah, a lot of love for the offensive guys, but I kind of want to, show some love to the defensive guys as well. You mentioned speed, and not too many people faster than Javari Flowers in the state of Florida. Won the 100-meter dash last year at Miami Northwestern. He's a guy that this fall has just been, making plays on both sides of the ball, and even on special teams for the Miami Northwestern Bulls, who are going to be playing in the state title later this week. He's a guy that, Miami was kind of cool on earlier in the year, during the summer, things like that, but have kind of turned things up on him, as he's shown his talent this fall, for the Bulls and Coach Teddy Bridgewater. And then another local defensive back, Justice Fitzpatrick. Steven, you've, built a great relationship with him, a guy that, Mario Cristobal recruited his older brother, Minka Fitzpatrick, over there at Alabama, landing him, and is hoping to do the same thing with the younger Fitzpatrick Justice, who's a big-time player at St. Thomas Aquinas. And, we can't forget the guys in the trenches, Kenai Pepe out of IMG Academy, a guy that Miami's been all over for a very, very long time. a great friendship with Francis Mauigoa, played with, some of those IMG guys when he was a freshman there, up in Bradenton. So he has a good relationship with not only the staff, but the players as well. And then Micah Smith out of Vero Beach High School recently named his top six. Miami was included that list, another top 100 prospect in the Sunshine State that the Canes are all over early on. So a ton of talent in the Sunshine State this year. Miami's 2025 class, I believe 61 or around that number percent of the guys were from Florida. So expect to see a lot of these names on that commit list, when we're looking back in December and saying, hey, who are the guys from Florida, Miami landed. So make sure to check that out. If you haven't, 2026 prospects in state that Miami Hurricanes are all over. And then today, we're actually moving on to out-of-state guys. I feel like during the fall, Steven, Miami got a lot of big-time talents from out-of-state. Down there in Coral Gables, getting their first look at Miami. We got guys like Jackson Cantwell, who's the number one prospect in the 2026 class. Zion Ely, who recently committed to Maryland, but Miami still really likes. Anthony Jones out of Alabama, just to name a few. So what are your thoughts on, the work Miami's doing out-of-state with getting those five-star, defensive linemen and offensive linemen down to campus early on?
Yeah, well, we've seen that Miami obviously really wants to, just really hone in on the pipeline in Florida, keep, like the best Florida kids in Florida. But I think what we've seen very consistently is if Miami is going to go out of state, they want to make sure that they're going out of state for a guy that they are sure on. Now, whether that's, going to be a five-star guy, like Jackson Cantwell or Zion Ely or one of those dudes, or or even a Justin Scott or a Marquise Lightfoot in recent years. Or if you're going to go after a guy who maybe you just have, a really, really good evaluation on, maybe a dude who isn't, quite as highly recruited, but a guy that you feel like you've done your homework on and you feel like is going to be a home run and you found this gem and no one else has clicked to it yet. Miami's definitely not taking any chances if they do choose to go out of state. I think this last year we saw them be much more selective about the talent that they want to take out of state if they are going to take one of those guys. This last year I know they didn't sign any, necessarily any five-star prospects, but I think we saw this year that if they're going to go after a Dalen Upshaw in Alabama, if they're going to go after a Luke Nickel in Georgia. Nickel was a guy who he's kind of in, like the recruiting territory that Florida State has had a lot of success in recent years, that Georgia obviously has had a lot of success in recent years, but Miami found him very early. They were very sure on him, and they made a great effort and were able to get him locked in. Then, you look at a guy like Dalen Upshaw, sort of a high 3-star, low 4-star guy, depending on the recruiting database that you're looking at. That was another guy that Miami just had a really good evaluation on and felt really, really good about and wanted to keep him locked in the class. So I do think we're going to see Miami kind of continue to be a little bit more selective whenever they go out of state, especially because the 2026 class does look like it's going to have some pretty freaking talented athletes in the state of Florida who I think a lot of us are really excited to see.
Yeah, since Mario Cristobal has arrived, in Coral Gables, he's made it kind of a mission to build that, state of Miami once again. And he's done a great job of landing a lot of local guys and a lot of, talented players from the state of Florida in general. So, make sure to check out that story that we have on the out-of-state targets in that 2026 class. And, Miami also does have, 3 guys committed in the 2026 class right now with Darion Coleman, Camden Portis, and Jordan Campbell all in the mix right now. Darion Coleman's actually going to be facing off against Malachi Toney on Friday for a state championship as Jones takes on American Heritage, which I think will be an awesome duel. Obviously Malachi Toney has been playing quarterback for the Patriots, and Darion Coleman has led his Jones team to an undefeated season. So a lot to look forward to with those two Canes commits facing off. And, Stephen, we'll be covering, some of the state title games, throughout the week and going forward through the weekend. Teams like St. Thomas Aquinas, Chaminade Madonna, American Heritage, like I mentioned, all playing for state titles. As we wrap up, this high school season, just, what were your thoughts about, maybe some of the guys that you saw, or just general, views of the high school football down in South Florida as we wrap up, this 2024 season?
Yeah, kind of the more that I watched some of these high schools in South Florida, the more I kind of felt like, I think that this class is kind of, or that the future of South Florida high school football is kind of young. The guys that Miami's going to be going after this year, they're still pretty young. I do think The 2026 class is going to be very featured and very prominent. The 25 class, we thought that it was going to be a lot deeper. Ended up not being quite as deep as we thought it was going to be at the start of the year. Then obviously in 24, you had a lot of the really, really high, top end talent. You had a guy like Jeremiah Smith. You had a JoJo Trader, you had a Jordan Lyle, you had a Chance Robinson, you had an OJ Frederick, and the list kind of goes on of some of those higher end dudes that you had in the 24 class. 26, I do think, is going to be kind of one of those classes where we see South Florida in general kind of start to get really deep again. There's already a lot of guys that I like in South Florida. And like I said, I do think that, because it does look like the 26 class could be a little bit deeper, that we could see Miami be a little bit more selective whenever they do choose to go out of state. But yeah, like I keep saying, I'm very excited to see what we have in 26.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that was kind of my biggest takeaway from the 2025 cycle. Obviously, not knocking any of the players that played there or down in South Florida this year, but I do feel like the 2026 class, has a little bit more of higher end talent. And, that was something that people asked. I remember, as we close out the 2024 cycle, was like, who's the next, big thing coming out of South Florida? Obviously, a ton of talent down there in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale area, but I do think the 2026 class is going to take it up a notch, and we'll be excited to cover those guys and, bring their stories to you guys here at CaneSport.com. So until then, make sure to check out, Miami's top targets in state and out of state in that 2026 class. But as we move on, kind of want to, put that bow on that 2025 class. Steven, you always do a great job of kind of having your 2025 class superlatives, whether it be, funniest recruits, most interesting recruiting stories, coaches, and things like that. So we're going to start off, with the coaches. Which position coach at Miami do you think did the best job in that 2025 class?
I kind of debated this for a while, but in the end, I ended up giving it to Cody Waddell. The Miami's tight ends coach kind of quietly did a really, really good job, and I'm not really totally sure if he really gets the credit that he deserves for getting the talent that he did to campus and doing it in such a timely fashion and getting these guys so solid so fast. Miami was completely done with their tight end recruiting by mid-April. That never happens, or if it does happen, it's pretty freaking seldom. But they got the two dudes that they really, really wanted a tight end and got them very quickly. They're both consensus 4-star tight ends. They wanted to get one guy who, kind of fit the mold of being a little bit more of a traditional, inline tight end who, can block and maybe be split out wide. And I think they got that in Luka Gilbert. And then, getting an H-back who's maybe a little bit more athletic, a little bit more versatile, some dude that you can do some more creative stuff with, and Brock Schott. And I think that these two could play very, very well together. I think that, it would make a lot of sense to see them on the field together, in similar packages or in different packages. I don't think that their skill sets are similar, but I do think that they are extremely compatible. I think they're extremely complementary of each other. I really like the two dudes that they got, and Waddell got them so quickly, locked them in so fast, and immediately after they committed, there was really no drama with either of them the entire year. Anytime that you talk to them, it was, hey man, I'm really excited. I'm really excited about the future of Miami. Go Canes. Can't wait to go play for Cody Waddell. And I attribute a lot of that to the relationship that Waddell built with them. He's getting my top spot. And I really do think that's deserved because I do think that he is a very good recruiting position coach. I'm really excited to see what these two guys are able to do because I have been immensely high on Brock Schott all throughout the cycle. I really like Luka Gilbert a lot too, and I think these two dudes are – I don't think there's anyone in America that wouldn't love this two-man tight end class.
Yeah, I agree with you. Coach Waddell quietly has done a really good job in that tight end room. And like you mentioned, got those guys on the board quickly, solidify their commitments, didn't entertain any other schools. And he got to work in that 2026 class. We know Mario Cristobal and his guys, like to recruit ahead. And it feels like for the majority of the fall, we were seeing 2026 tight ends and, other guys down the road instead of the 2025 guys, which he had locked in. So, kudos to Coach Waddell, give him his flowers for, bringing in two great tight ends who can do two different skill sets that, can really, help that Miami tight end room in the future. So make sure to check out that story on Steven's grading of the position coaches and who he think did the best in the recruiting cycle. And another story I want to touch on that ran yesterday. You gave out your awards, in the 2025 class, and a few funny ones, that I want to talk about. Most chaotic, recruitment, least dramatic recruitment, best interview, funniest signee, quiet signee, things like that. But the one I want to talk about the most is funniest signee. This is a guy that you've, said you've had the funniest conversations with. Obviously, Amari Wallace, the 2025 safety out of Miami Central, excuse me. Why did you pick Amari Wallace as your funniest signee this cycle?
I am thinking back to one specific conversation that I had with Amari back in April before he ever committed, but Miami was recruiting him very hard. He had a lot of interest in Miami. Miami liked him. He liked the Hurricanes. Everything was, shaping up very, very favorably for Amari to end up committing to Miami. We all felt really good about it. And another school, I will not say which school, came to Miami Central one day, and afterward, so there was kind of some poking and prodding around, asking about Amari Wallace, just how talented of a kid he is, how open his recruitment is, all of that stuff. And this was a school that had not yet formally offered Amari, but they were definitely, floating the idea of it. And I'm not going to name the school. I'm not going to name the coach, but Amari was not exceptionally interested. And the way that Amari told it to me was that Amari kind of painted a picture that this school's coach kind of wanted him to look favorably upon the school, to tell him, how great it would be and how excited he would be to go get an offer from this school, and how much he would love to entertain the idea of playing for the school. And he basically said that he was thinking to himself the whole time that he could tell them to look elsewhere. I'll say, because I'm not sure if I could actually say what he really did tell me, but that was hands down the funniest interview that I've ever. Not even an interview. We were just conversing. That was hands down one of the funniest interactions I've ever had with someone. There was never a moment where he was not brutally blunt, hilariously honest about the way that he viewed everything. This could be Miami Central. This could be other schools. This could be other high schools. This could be the University of Miami, and the schedule that Miami had, or his hopes for the Hurricanes. Which, by the way, he said the entire way he thought Miami was going undefeated, and he would lay out harsh reasons why he thought the Hurricanes would go undefeated. And there was never a moment where this kid was not able to get you to crack a smile. I think he has an awesome sense of humor. I think he's going to be a great joy for team reporters to get to interview in the years to come. I really look forward to seeing those press clippings.
Yeah, I really enjoy interviewing Amari Wallace as well. I had the chance to do, a few inside the line just him, and those are some, most memorable interviews with him, on and off camera, just, chopping it up with Amari Wallace side of Miami Central. So make sure to check out that story that we ran yesterday as well. Pretty cool getting Steven insight on kind of the awards for that 2025 class. And, before we wrap it up, this morning show, Steven, obviously, like we talked about at the beginning, the portal is open. A lot of names, coming into the portal, a lot of, guys leaving Miami as well too. But just want to get your, quick thoughts about what positions of needs do you think Miami needs to attack in this portal to kind of really push the team and get them over this little 10-2 hump, and just take the guys to the next level, next fall.
I mean, man, does it really need to be said? The secondary, Miami secondary just struggled in such an egregious way this year. At times it kind of felt like, man, if this pass defense can get 2 stops, 3 stops, Miami's probably in a position where, they're either 11-1 or 12-0. getting ready for the playoff. I mean, the secondary really was the Achilles heel the whole way. I'd look at Miami to take a look at corners. I would look at them to take a look at safeties. I think that, Miami shouldn't be looking so much for plug and play guys as they should be, true free agents. If there's a Caleb Downs type of safety available in the portal, by all means, go get a Caleb Downs type of guy. We're getting to the point where the holes that Miami has are so clear and so obvious that I think that we can all look at Miami and say, okay, they don't need a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and maybe one guy here and one guy there. No, I think we're getting to the point where the holes are really clear. They're really obvious. It's not just about adding depth at positions anymore. It's about going out and getting guys that are immediately going to contribute. We're not looking for 10 snaps a game guys because, quite frankly, that your depth doesn't matter whenever your top end is not good. Miami has plenty of depth. The problem was last year, the starters just as a unit collectively, and Miami's coaches will tell you this, their starters collectively as a unit in the secondary did not play up to standard. They did not play well enough to get the job done. I would look at them to address the secondary in a really big way.
Yeah, I agree with you. And something that I said when I was, someone asked me about the same thing. I said, in the portal, I think Miami is going to go after guys that, like you said, can make an immediate impact, not kind of like a Band-Aid guy or a glue guy that, in a year or so he can be that guy. No, I think Miami's going after guys that are going to come in and make an instant impact. And I feel like, over the last 2 or 3 recruiting cycles in the portal, Miami's kind of, gone with a few guys that are saying, oh, this is a developmental guy. Oh, we can get him in the system, and then in year 2, he can make an impact. Now, I think you're going after those bona fide, free agents like you mentioned. So I'm going to be super excited to see what direction the Hurricanes and Coach Cristobal kind of head in with this transfer portal. Like I've been saying, all throughout the morning, make sure to stay tuned at CaneSport.com as we'll have you covered with all the transfer portal and the state championship games, throughout the week. So thank you for tuning in this morning. For Stephen Wagner, I'm Izubee Charles. Have a great rest of your day. Oof.